Okay. Are we live? Are we being filmed? Okay. Thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate it. I'm a little nervous tonight because I am with some like super powerhouses up here. I am with Samara Cohen and Wendy Finerman, and I'm going to cheat and read a little bit, and I normally don't like that, but I really don't want to miss anything, especially when I describe your jobs, and yours is kind of complicated. So Samara is the Chief Investment Officer of ETFs and Index Investments for BlackRock, and she is a member of their Global Executive Committee. And Wendy is a renowned film producer, most notably an Oscar winner for her film Forrest Gump. She's a producer of a dozen other films, including Drumline, Stepmom, and I was introduced to Wendy in 2005 when she barged into my showroom and said, "My name is Wendy Finerman, I'd like to film here. I'm making a movie called Devil Wears Prada," and that's been greenlit for a sequel. So congrats to you guys, and very honored to have these women here with us tonight. And there is a very specific reason why these two women were selected to be my co-hosts for the launch of our first Creative Pragmatist Salon series. And the reason why is because you guys both really get to the heart of what tonight's conversation is about, because both are in industries that are really filled with tropes. Black and white ideas about one's experiences, their day-to-day lives, and what's required to succeed. And here at Tibby, we talk a lot about style, obviously, and all the associated cliches. But we also talk about creative pragmatism and achieving a balance. And on the surface, it may seem it is nothing more than about like wearing a full skirt with like, a slim shoe. But at its core, it's about our desire to reflect that we are nuanced individuals, and that nothing in life is truly black and white, and that seeking that will only set you up for disappointment or worse, failure. It's about acknowledging and understanding the gray and embracing it, and looking at how different individuals, highly successful individuals by any standard of measurement, operate. So we're going to delve into the mindset required for success, no matter the industry, and how riddled it is with stereotypes. Because I think like if we imagine you, like when I'm like, what's Samara doing today? Like I imagine you jetting around and using really complicated words like covariance matrix and risk mapping. I'm not even sure what those are, but I Googled them.
We both went to the same school, ironically.
They both went to Wharton.
That's true. It's true. Isn't that ironic?
Go Dogs,
Isn't that wrong?
University of Georgia.
It's very wrong.
Intimidating. And Wendy, I imagine you hanging out with Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks at some bungalow at the Beverly Hills Hotel, saying very fabulous things with fabulous people. But what I want you all to know is I have a very deep personal relationship with both of these women. I count them amongst my closest friends. Both relationships started initially through Tibby, but quickly evolved into something much more. And trust me, it is not because of any global investments that I've made or because of any fabulous contacts that I've been able to bring you, but rather it's because the three of us share a common mindset that is predicated on curiosity, hard work, and the idea that knowing what you want in life and what you're willing to do, and equally, if not more important, what you're not willing to do to achieve it is critical. So I have a slew of questions for these women. I'm very excited about them. I wrote them out a while ago, and then when I was rereading them, I was like, these are good. But my first question, and Samara, I'm going to direct it at you, and then I want to hear from you, Wendy, is I would like to know when you discovered what that set of things was that you own that was fully proprietary to you. And when I sent you guys these questions in advance so I wouldn't catch you off guard, I used as an example my brother-in-law. He worked his way through paying for Princeton. He went to University of Georgia Law School. He went and taught history, and then he became a prosecutor in the U.S. Attorney's Office, and he coached, he was a basketball coach for years for his two sons. And after 20 years of leaving the U.S. Attorney's Office, he is now arguably one of the most successful prosecutors in the U.S. And his special skill set, without knowing it, was being a teacher was really valuable. Teaching in front of a jury and everything. It was really important to be a basketball coach and like get everyone fired up. And it was really critically important to really hone a skill set and learn it, and to have the grit to like work your way through a school. And so that combination is something that you don't find it in a resume, you don't find it on a book. And what do you think, Samara, what's your special set of proprietary things that you own?
So I actually think that what is proprietary to me is what you said. It's the set of things. It's that there are a few things in me that I think are don't like always live together in one person. And so I think the best answer I can give to that question is going to be through two very quick stories that both from when I was, I think the first when I was 18 and the second from when I was 19 years old. So when I was when I was graduating high school and going to college, I was really passionate about theater, which you guys both know, we've talked about this. Mm-hmm. What I do now has nothing to do with theater, but I was passionate about being a theater major, and specifically, I wasn't an actor. I was always kind of a backstage kid, and I did more backstage stuff when I went to college, but I was passionate about the impact that storytelling, like in a live theater, could have on people and on a community. And so what I wanted to do was going to have something to do with that. But my senior year, I took BC Calculus in high school with a teacher who was incredibly intimidating and awesome at the same time. And I took the AP exam and got a great score on it. And she wrote me a letter that summer. And looking back on it, that letter was really meaningful to me in terms of where I went after that. And I didn't think about it at the time, but she wrote, "You're really great at math, and there's a lot of things you could do with this in the world that might surprise you." And I kind of, and at the point that
and
time,
you never really thought of it.
I didn't. And also I was like, yes, because I got this score, I got all of the credit that I needed in college, so I knew I could just do theater stuff and not do anything with math. But I actually found when I got to college that I missed math, and I thought about that letter, and it gave me a lot of confidence as I started. I took an economics class and liked it, and then I got into more technical stuff, financial engineering. It was mostly men, but she had given me such confidence through that letter that I kind of I felt like I could pursue it, and I did. So that's story number one. Story number two, I want to tell to this audience in particular because. And I've never told you this story, but I think it will resonate. It was so I got to college, and I was kind of finding my way in the undergraduate theater scene, and a woman in my one of my classes was producing the fall drama on campus, and she said, "Well, I'm looking for an assistant producer, so you can be my assistant producer and follow me around," which I did. And then I did I'm super organized. I'm kind of good in a crazy, hectic atmosphere. This is something that later translated to a trading floor. But she said, as this semester was coming to an end, it was opening night of the show, and people were talking about what they were going to do the next semester. And she said, "I have an idea I want to run by you. There's this guy, and this guy, he was a director. He was this, senior student director, legendary on campus. He's looking for an assistant director. And nobody that we're suggesting for him is satisfactory, and he's driving us crazy, but he's brilliant, and we kind of think he'll like you, so we want you to meet him." So opening night of the show, they say he's going to come to the show, and I'm there sitting outside doing tickets or whatever. So I'll never forget this moment. It was like the seas parted when he showed up, and he walks through, and he looked at me, and he goes, "Hi, I've heard a lot about you. I'm John. I love your outfit, and I want you to be my assistant director." And I've thought about it to this moment, and just so you know what I was wearing, I was wearing this was like 90s, like crinoline, kind of a dress I'd bought the year before for like a black tie formal. But I think what he saw, he made a judgment like that about me. And I think what he saw in me was a couple of things. Like he heard I was organized and smart and good in a crisis. But I think he also saw I had a lot of respect
Yeah.
for opening night. Like, this was a, hardcore feminist drama about the Salem witch trials, like in 90s grunge era. And I was there in like my strapless black tie, like crinoline dress. And it was also like a brave move to put on that dress. And I
Yeah.
think it was those qualities of like respect for the show and bravery. And he just knew I was his assistant director. So that was a package.
I love that. And I mean, you've certainly brought that to BlackRock, because this is how she walks the halls. This was not like, there was no switching of like taking a pinstripe suit off and getting redressed in the office here. And so,
Except for the part where I spilled my lunch on my
sardines.
vest and you had to give me the exact
She
same one
did
to wear. But
pour
yes.
sardine oil on her vest today. Wendy, what's your special group of things that makes you
I mean,
so
ironically,
successful?
and not to sound, I don't want to copy you, but I will say to you that, and I never even thought of this because we've known each other. In a similar way, I was really great at math. Like, I think I got like one thing off on my SATs in math, and I think I got whatever the bare minimum was for signing your name.
Yeah.
And so I felt really strong with my math skills, which for the most part had been previous to that. Like, I had been always, and I'm not a girly girl, and I'm not, I'm just kind of middle of the road and whatever it may be. I don't really kind of go one way or the other. I love fashion, I love these things, but as you guys all know tonight, I hate makeup. I I just want my hairstyle the same way all the time. So I'm not fussy in that way. But I think that from a very young age, I was literally, had reading comprehension issues and other issues, but I had no at all obstacles in math, and so often I was the only girl in like the math, the advanced math classes. I mean, I still remember it was 7th grade. It was me and 12 boys, and so I think that actually gave me confidence to be the only woman and also to go to your strengths. And one of the things I've always looked at is to go to your strengths. And ironically, I ended up getting a job where I have to read. And on top of having to read, I had, I still do, you never get cured from it because it's coming back, something called strabismus. If anybody knows, it's cross-eyed. If you're cross-eyed, and you need to get either work on your eyes or you get them surgically fixed, and it's very hard to read because it's really impactful in your brain. And if it gets really bad, what happens is like you just fall asleep.
Yeah.
And then I ended up finding a career where I had to read. And I kind of used my weakness to that if I could stay up and read this something and it was really good, then that said like, oh my God, I didn't fall asleep. It must be something.
Yeah.
And I think that what it taught me to do is to find something, and then ultimately, not related to either of them, but I think the essence of a lot of professionally what I do is, because I'm happy to be an outsider, I just, it's not like I chose to be an outsider. I'm not like one of those people who purposely dyed their hair 18 different colors so you get the attention, but I'm not the normal person, I had my kids young, I got
You've
divorced
chosen
young.
not to live in LA.
I chose not to live in LA. I chose not to go to the Hamptons. I hang out with them on the weekends. The norm. But I think that, there's a balance between being an outsider, being comfortable with yourself, or what is the common ground for all people. And just to find what's a common ground that kind of makes you feel comfortable. I don't know if I answered it properly.
I love that, and I think, just in summary, I just think it's interesting that like you're BlackRock and you mentioned creativity, and you are a producer, a director, and you mentioned finance and numbers and everything, and so.
And the first time we met, it was super easy for us to
We're
talk
so
to
easy.
each
And
other.
you just jumped in.
But by the way, and I think, ironically, I think that my ability to feel comfortable with numbers is not normal for my business.
Yeah.
So I am very comfortable. I mean,
It makes you an
happens the other
outlier.
day. Yes, and you're very comfortable to find a creative solution to it. And people, I can do the math quicker than anybody else, and you can find a dramatic entry, right?
I think it's one of the things that we always tell people is, really focus on not bifurcating your life. And a lot of people will tell me, they're like, I want to be this, but in the meantime, I'm going to be a waiter. And I'm like, okay, but while you're waitering, you are multitasking, you are thinking on your feet, you're doing customer service, you're being creative, just problem solve. So I love this. And so, Samara, I'm going to ask you a question next is, now that we've talked about the skill set that you guys have that you think you've really leaned into to be proprietary, what are the ones that you think are the most overhyped? What would you tell like our Gen Zers out there? These skills are overhyped. Take your foot off the gas on those.
So I don't know if it's a skill, but it's a quality that I see often, at work. I see people being told, you need more executive presence, and like I've grown to really hate that term. I think it lacks complete clarity. And
Yeah,
the
because what does
more-
that mean?
So
A
exactly,
navy
what does
suit,
that
or-
mean? Like, what is executive presence? I think, though, unbundling it, people need to learn how to influence, to really effect change in whatever you do. And influencing, like, is how a person most effectively influences. Like, you have to figure that out for yourself, because it has to be very authentic to you, and a lot of it is how you tell your story. So a lot of times somebody, when they're thinking about, does this person have executive presence, they might have decided that they don't because they saw them do some sort of presentation and they weren't, effective or impactful in the presentation. So what I think they're really trying to say, and I often find myself trying to unpack for people what was meant if they've gotten the feedback, like, you need to be more visible, you need to do a road show and tell people what you do.
Yeah.
That's not it. And I think that that's really kind of useless advice. I think the meaningful advice is, and I will say, when I got to the firm I'm at now, I had come from an investment a bank before, and I was in a relatively technical role, and I'd never had to do a main stage presentation. And one of the most crushing moments of my was within my first year at BlackRock, was doing a presentation I was really passionate about, and looking out in the audience and seeing that there were people on their phone and people falling asleep. And I said to somebody, what did,
Oh my God,
I don't understand, I'm talking about something that's so cool. And he said, yeah, he's like, but I was there in the presentation, and to be honest, I was being interviewed by the Wall Street Journal in the back, and I wasn't listening, but it didn't look very interesting. And the bottom line was, I needed to work with the coach and figure out how to find my voice, because what I was saying was important to me, but I was failing to connect with this audience on it. And there was work I could do to figure that out. And that was useful feedback.
Yes.
But executive presence, useless.
Not a real thing. Interesting. What about you? What do you think is just overhyped? And
Overhyped is having Amy convince you need to wear fall in August.
It's fake news.
Fall in August. Okay,
We will-
I lasted
we will
as
delete
long
those.
as I could. She got the no sleeves. Let me say, she got no sleeves. I got fall
It's
in
a
August.
12 mower, Wendy.
Okay. In a different way, I don't really believe in the networking and working people and how you're supposed to. I was teasing before. You should go to lunch. You should go to this. You should go to that. You should be conforming. I have found great luck and great returns by not being a conformist. When I went to Wharton, I was one of the few girls. I mean, there were some more when you were there because I'm a little older. But to not be a conformist and to kind of be entertaining. And I'm not saying to be a cute entertaining, but just speak your mind, be entertaining, call attention, be smart. If you're going to say something, you can be outlandish in what you say. Obviously, in today's world, one cannot say half of the things that I've said before, because I would just be canceled for the rest of my life and 4 generations forward. But be authentic to yourself and feel and and go with humor and don't be too serious. And this whole thing of like owning yourself. Don't own yourself, just be yourself. Like, you don't need to own yourself. And I've had incidents where being me and can be I'm I think a little off the bound, a little quirky, I'm a little this, I'm a little that. But by the way, that's who I am. So therefore, I'm more comfortable with people with who I am.
Yeah.
And I probably I had the opposite of you, is I was that comfortable doing that beforehand, but there was a whole bunch of hiccups along the way. But then it came to serve me,
And it does come to serve you. And I think that's, Elaine and I, that you guys know, our president, we talk about this a lot, how it's a long road and it's a good road, and just, live in the moment and enjoy it. But I think both of you guys really went with being yourself here, like really being your great storyteller and really allowing that to come out. And
I'll interrupt to add one more thing. Coming from Hollywood, it's really a place of a lot of self-promotion. And
which is different than being yourself.
Which is different than being yourself.
Yeah.
I never felt comfortable with it.
Yeah.
And people would say, well, if you don't do it, you're not going to get ahead. And it's just something I don't feel comfortable having a publicist. It's actually self-loathing almost to myself. Like, I believe your work should speak for yourself. But basically also, even if you need to do it, I'm not comfortable doing it. So and I think in some ways, it probably hurt me in the beginning because I could have been a little bit more self-congratulatory and wrote right. But in the long run, it kind of sent a message like she is who she is, and look at her record. You don't need to look at anything else.
The long run is key. And I think that even when we talk about linking things back with clothing, and we talk about wearing pieces that have a point of view, like at the end of the day, when you strip everything away, that's all you have. But it really is important that it's grounded in something that is based in knowledge and curiosity, and
but it's an
just those
expression
two
of who you
things.
are.
Exactly.
If you're true to yourself.
So then to that next question, do you have a set of principles, Samara, that you govern your life by? And are they the same principles for work and life? Or do you even distinguish between the two?
I think you know what my answer is, whether I
do.
distinguish
I'm like,
between the two.
we
Yeah,
walked
but
for
she's
hours
never asked me the question in that
Yes.
way. I don't distinguish between the two because my work and my career is a part of my life.
Yeah.
And one of the other things that drives me bananas, besides executive presence, is when I'm asked about work-life balance, because it is this this assumption that your work is something that is extracurricular to your life. And for me, my work and my career, it's part of the choose your own adventure that I have, made for myself and my life, and I get a lot of meaning from my work. Now, I think to your question about principles, something that I've learned about myself that I think I can look back in the, all of the years that I've worked and see that this is true, but I definitely couldn't have articulated this even in my first, 10 years or more of working, is I am extremely purpose-driven. I need to have a North Star in what I'm doing.
Yep.
And when I have that sort of North Star, and for me, I have really, after a long career doing lots of different things in financial markets, I have a very strong view of what I want my professional legacy to be, and that is that I want to make financial markets more transparent, more accessible, more resilient, so that we can create more investors and better financial futures for more people around the world. And my nexus of expertise is around financial markets and how they're built and how they're constructed. But it is really kind of having that, and I can give, tons of examples from the super technical to the not technical at all, but just kind of having that gut check to the why I do things every day is extremely important in how I navigate my life.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. How about you, Wendy?
Okay, first of all, then what happened last Sunday night, a week ago, with the financial markets? No, I'm teasing. As half of our crowd. I think, I wish that I could have my lives, meaning work and personal, blended in a different way. But I haven't been able to find that balance. Not that, and it's a work in progress, you know. Many different reasons. We all have different stories. We all have had different journeys. We've had losses. I had losses at young ages, and you know, there are lots of siblings in my family that you know, that are, you know, I come from this family of like uber achievers that were just like, you know, that just must have been, I had no idea. My mom was not a good cook or anything, so I have no idea. Maybe it was just illegal drugs or something she gave us at a very young age. But we are just the most competitive, achieve-oriented. And by the way, every one of them has their holy grail. Like, it's not just like, you know, people are like, what happened? So in the personal situation, there is, unfortunately, we were raised in a situation of a lot of, and it wasn't, by the way, we all went to Ivy League schools or Berkeley or MBA, we're all incredible, but it was not the kind of nurturing you're gonna come home and all be kind of cozy and whatever. Right. So I've tried to learn to break that cycle with my own kids. However, the irony is, I can say for my personal life, and it really all comes back to how I was raised, the work ethic and honoring yourself and treating people well and being kind to people and not, I get very, very, very upset when you hear in Hollywood where people say, it's my movie. Mm-hmm. And I'm going, oh, really? It's your movie? You load the camera? Did you dress those people? Did you write those words? You are amazing. I've never met anybody who's done all of those things. And I'm one who really feels very comfortable to be behind people as their kind of support. Yeah. So I've not kind of figured out the way with you know, just have to be personal with that answer. Yes. So it's not, the balance is not quite there.
But I think one thing's interesting, and Samara, you refer to it as a North Star, and that's something that, I mean, you and I have talked a lot about how I think a lot of people would settle themselves if they viewed their life as following a compass rather than a GPS guide. You know, GPS, it literally is telling you every street that you're supposed to take, where every pothole is, where the cops are. And I think both of you guys kind of just, you've marched in the right direction, and you know that, oh, there is that street, but you just know, like, generally which way you're going, because you make lots of right turns and wrong turns, and you do step in a lot of potholes, you know, but it's part of the process.
And I love that. I love that analogy. And I think the really key thing is when you step in the potholes, because in a long career, like, there are moments when you are in the eye of a storm, you know, like, you know, last Sunday night. And, you know, there are moments in markets, moments in the world. And I think that is also when you may have to take a very different set of actions than you were taking the prior day. But having that compass, you know, kind of gives you that, you know, that clarity of what to do next, even if it's very different than what you did before.
So I'm just curious, and this was not in the questions, but when you are in the eye of the storm, when everything is melting down or whatever, does that, like, give you energy and you problem solve, or do you just want to, like, crawl under the couch?
In my job, you have, if you're in the middle of making a movie, you've got like 500 people around you, and, you know, I've had situations where it's been really bad, and you can't dive. I mean, you can't, like, you just have to take ownership if it's yours, or even if it's not yours and you're being blamed for it, or people saying they're being mistreated or whatever, you just have to rise to the occasion, and you pick yourself up by your bootstraps. And and it's leadership. I mean, that's what you have to do. You have to be
Yeah.
a leader. And even, and by the way, one of the best things is to say sometimes is, I'm sorry. That wasn't right. Or I don't know.
Yeah.
But that can be a leader to
Yeah.
say, or you got to give me a little while. I've got to figure this out. You are heard, or I don't think you're right.
Yeah.
I think saying I don't know in a high stakes room and conversation can be the ultimate power move. Because it takes a lot of bravery to say, I don't know, but I can get the answer to that,
Right.
or whatever
Let me
it
figure
is.
it out.
But I
Let me
think
figure
that's
it
like
out.
a huge power move.
Yeah.
And a big rookie mistake is to
Right.
pretend you know when you don't.
Yeah, I think that, especially when a younger employee asks for advice, you just, like, there are some things in life that you fake till you make it, but not this. I'm curious, so, like, when you do want to push yourself, when you want to take risks, like, how do you measure how much risk is too much? Like, how do you measure how much you're really willing to put on the line in taking a risk?
I don't know.
That's not a good
Spoken
answer.
like a true leader.
I do think that is like a constantly moving target.
Yeah.
For me, I think the taking risk often looks like asserting a contrarian and strong point of view
Yeah.
and backing it up. And I would say in my
And asserting a contrarian and strong point of view, as long as it truly is your point of view,
Yes,
and not
yes, as long
contrarian
as it
for
is
the
my
sake
point
of
of
being
view.
contrarian.
But for me personally, actually, learning how to flex, particularly, learning that balance of hearing other points of view, and still being able to make decisions quickly with imperfect information
Yeah.
is like a constant challenge, and one that you have to do again and again and again, because often the worst outcome is simply not making a decision. So just knowing, and like I loved what you said, Wendy, about sometimes saying I'm sorry. The other thing sometimes that you will end up saying is, yeah, got that wrong.
Yep. I
But
do
at
not.
least we made a decision.
Yeah. Yeah, that absolutely passivity just because you don't have the right or enough information. I mean, because when you are making big, bold decisions, the actual information to be based on is still subjective, right? Like, nothing can ever tell you definitively what's going to happen in the future. You know what happened in the past, but the future's your big leap.
I remember a story once we were filming in Washington Square, and it called for a snow day, okay? And there was no snow. It cost about $150,000, whatever it was, 100 to 150 grand, depending on, to cover Washington Square in snow.
In snow.
Like to make fake snow, so it's there tomorrow. We look at all that stuff, we have the satellites, we all get together, and we all make this call, and the call's like, no, it's 50-50, doesn't look like snow. Well, just as the snow machines show up the next morning at 6 o'clock, guess what it does? It blizzards, all right? What are we gonna do?
Yeah.
What are we gonna do? We did the best we could.
Yeah.
It would have been a hell of a lot worse if we said, we're gonna maybe hope that there's snow, but I think the best thing is to do is take ownership for things
Yes.
and then just move on,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I think that's one of the key things is, especially depending on where you are in your career, it's because it can be scary to make a big, bold suggestion,
Hers is a lot more than just snow.
right? But it can be scary to make a big, bold suggestion because you don't want to get it wrong, right? Like, you might be in a position to be like, I got it wrong, but someone 2 or 3 levels down may not, right? And I think that part of the thing is just feeling the confidence to know that, like, you've got to put it out there, you've got to do your best. And if you were to absolutely get burned at the stake for being wrong based on information that you thought was solid, right? Like people,
As best as you could.
then those times, those probably aren't, you're probably not with the right people around you, you know, if they're willing to throw you under
But there's that
a
gap.
bus
But there's
for
that
getting
gap,
wrong.
Amy, like, there's the gap in all of what we do where there's no guarantees. There's
Right.
that gap between all the recommendations, whatever the research you've done on the companies, it all points a certain way. Markets are going this way. There's often, in anywhere in life, there's that gap of the gut.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this makes me think of another principle that I've realized about myself more recently, which is that I really thrive by being part of a high-performing team. And to answer your question about how I am in the eye of the storm,
Yep.
like, I'm actually, like, I'm awesome in the eye of a storm. Like, I thrive in chaos.
Yep.
But the thing that I'm the most proud of, I think that I've learned over the past, you know, call it probably 5 years, is how to bring out the best of people around me in the eye of the storm. Because people are very different and they have very different reaction functions. And
Yeah.
so, for example, something I learned about myself is when things are going crazy, you know, we did this thing at my firm. You do these personality tests, and it's called HBDI, and I came out like what they called like basically I was like equal on all of these functions, except under stress when I become incredibly collaborative. So what that looks like on a trading floor is if something's happening, I am grabbing a lot of people and saying, let's get together, let's put our heads together, because the principle for me is that in the right circumstances, collective problem solving can be the answer to imperfect information and how you come together and quickly, like, you know, do the best you can to come to an answer. Not everybody in the middle of chaos, like, wants to be pulled into a meeting, and sometimes there are people who actually need to be given, okay, I need some time, I need the data, I need to look at this, like, God, woman, leave me alone and let me do some analysis.
Yeah.
And so actually realizing, like, what those different types are and how to give people space and bring them together to actually bring out the best of a group of people in the eye of the storm, like, that's something I have been striving towards, and getting that right is very fulfilling. Which I don't always do, but I'm working on it.
No, do you thrive in a team, or are you like alone?
Oh, no, I really, I love to work in a team. And I think there's like nothing more gratifying than having people who I've mentored that will come back to me and say thank you, or, you know, or you watch them thrive, or you basically can sit by the side and let them make some of these decisions. I mean, that's the ultimate gift, you know,
I
to
think
see that and do that.
I will say that, like, when people talk about, like, oh, it must suck to turn 50 and blah, 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 but it doesn't. I work
In
with
that
a lot
voice,
of young people.
yeah.
In that voice, exactly. But what I love about it, and what I love about it being a company owner, and I would imagine for you guys as well, is that I had no idea when I was younger how truly valuable it was that every single person brought something really different to the table, and how important it was that they had these individual skill sets that worked as a whole. But, you know, I just growing up, like, and like I said, go dogs, UGA, but like I thought, you know, if I was going to be in finance, it would be like, I would be the Wharton type, and it would be requiring this and that. But it really does, like, take a village of strange people to pull something together in a great way.
But when you have, I'll say this for at least from a professional level, and even from a personal level, I mean, the greatest successes that we've encountered, I think, are, I can meet, there's groups of people, I did a movie 30 years ago, or it was 5 years ago, or 10 years ago. Ironically, those successes, there's a warmth that we all share together still to this day. And we may not have been on the same page about everything,
Yeah.
but we all had a common goal,
Yeah.
you know, and synergy. I mean, when I was hearing you speak, I was thinking about synergy. It's like the synergy that you can, that they all kind of, it comes together.
And connection. I mean, something, you know, we've talked about is, and this gets into, like, Amy and I had a long conversation with some of our friends about work-life balance and you know, feeling sometimes, and one of the things I said is sometimes I felt like I get shamed for loving my work so much that, like, it's not like for me, it's like a badge of honor sometimes, those, like, times that I was up all night with colleagues. And but I think to what you just said, Wendy, it's also that these are moments when you really forge connection and trust, and the people that you experience those moments with, like, you have built something with them that is there forever. And that's something I have thought about a lot, particularly in these kind of post-pandemic years, when, you know, we started bringing people back to the office much earlier than lots of other firms. And I'm the head of our global women's network, and there was a real conversation at our firm about whether this was penalizing women to actually ask them to come to the office, because we demonstrated so beautifully during COVID how effective we were when we were remote. But I think what we found is that in those first, 6 months, 4 or 6 months of the pandemic, we were operating on these deep, these deep reservoirs of trust that we had built before, and a lot of adrenaline, because, like, we'd never done anything like this, and we were going to make it work. But then we were hiring people who had never been in person and never met us, and it was. And this is, you know, something that's exactly right. And so rebuilding that, and the, you know, when I think about how you build these teams that can, especially teams of people who have the diversity of thought that you most want to let you solve problems creatively, those are the hardest teams to get work together, because they think about things differently, they attack problems differently. So the way, and this is my theater background, like, you know, building an ensemble cast where people feel safe that somebody's going to have their back if they take risk and they make a mistake, like, that is just very hard to do when you aren't together in person.
And you've never met. Like, some of them never met.
Especially when you've never met.
Like, I remember people who were in the financial field who would, like, they'd never met their boss for 8 months.
So question, and I think it's the answer is going to be nuanced, because everything we answer is always nuanced. But in business, what's the worst thing to you that could happen? Is it financial ruin, or your integrity is ruined? What's worse?
I absolutely think it's feeling like I invested time and energy and passion into something that didn't make a difference, that, you know, wasn't kind of serving a purpose of, you know, which is why, like, knowing that, and I've made some pretty big career decisions that, you know, maybe looked crazy from the outside, but because I was so sure this is what I wanted to do, that I was okay if it meant I wasn't gonna, you know, get a promotion or a job title or whatever. Like, that's not what mattered. What mattered to me was feeling like I could be part of, you know, for me, I know this sounds so super nerdy, but it is true. Like, I want to be part of modernizing financial markets. And so feeling like I'm doing something that undermines that would be the worst professionally.
Would be your gut.
Yeah.
What about you?
I just integrity. I mean, I don't. It's somewhat a different comparison, because it's a different business. It's an entirely different business. You know, somebody once said to me when I was really young and making my first movie, and it was really stressful one of my first movies with really big movie stars, and it was really big. It was a disaster. I knew right away it was a financial disaster, and I called up a mentor of mine, very, very famous producer. And I said, like, what do I do? Like, literally the actor had called in and said, I think it was day one of shooting. I think I want to shoot in continuity, which means as the script reads. Well, you don't shoot a movie as the script reads because there's 5 locations here and there's, And I said, well, what do I do? He said, well, do the best you can, because if it's a hit and you went over budget, no one's going to care.
Right.
And if it's a failure, they lost all the money. So,
Yeah.
so it's like,
Yeah.
I go.
What it is.
It is what it is, and so I go with my and what I feel is the right thing to do. Always, not that that's not right, but I don't have the same financial analysis
Yeah.
on a day-to-day basis. My financial analysis doesn't come sometimes till 2 or 3 years later. So you're not judged in that way.
Yeah. And you probably have to really hold on to your seat to be judged with history in the long run versus the immediate
I mean,
immediate reviews
in a different way, a lot of the films that we've chosen to be part of are, stories that were impossible to get told. That I was just diligent to try to get them told. So it's a little bit more of a singular role. But so once you become known to be kind of an underdog in telling these things, and if you do it enough times right, then people may start to listen. So you kind of can't, I never go with the flow. I never go with, because everyone else says the markets are going to turn, you're going to go that way. Or everyone else says, whoever was the biggest star last week, I'm going to hire him again for next week.
Yeah.
I go with what I feel in my gut.
I just want to wrap this up with you guys by saying I just want to restate the obvious here, which may have actually become less obvious while we were talking. But this is fashion company, BlackRock, and Hollywood, and it really, what is incredible is when you find people who really share your mindset, when everything up here just kept linking to storytelling, to what's important to your life, having a point of view and being yourself. I really encourage everyone to, strip away deeper with the people that you're around if they can be stripped. And some people can't, and that's fine, and you just peel away and there's nothing. But for other people, there is so much.
So that's what we take off all our tippy clothes. There's just nothing. We strip it away,
Yeah,
and there's
it's-
just
if
nothing.
they're not wearing
we're
Tibby,
the same.
then
We're the
forget
same.
But I really, this is what these series are really hoping to do, is really show the commonalities of these mindsets, and I love you guys for doing this.
Thanks
Come
for
with
inviting
me.
us,
Thanks
Amy.
for listening.
And
We love you.
it's
We'll
just
see you
fun.
Sunday walking.
They're so smart. They're so smart. Do you guys have any questions or anything that anyone wants to ask? Hi.
Hi there. So when I was listening to you guys talk, you guys are all extremely successful and advanced in your careers, and I'm at a certain point in my career, and I was wondering if you guys have any suggestions or like a mantra in terms of learning like when to say no. That's something that I struggled with at the beginning of my career. I said yes to everything, and I'm grateful for all those yeses, but now it's really hard sometimes to say no to things, and I feel really bad about it, but
Yeah.
you just can't physically do everything, and figuring that out. Do you have any suggestions?
So, we could probably do a whole session on this. I'll give you just a couple of quick thoughts. So first of all, I've worked with coaches a couple of times, and that's been transformative for me. And there's lots of different ways to get kind of coaching help. But one that I'm actually working with one now, and I worked with someone started right in 2019, and then through the we didn't realize I was going to be working with him while we went into lockdown, but I did, and it was helpful. That coach recommended this book to me, and I'm forgetting the name of the author, but it's called The Myth of the Nice Girl: How to Have the career you want without becoming a person you hate. And the thing I loved about the book is that, and I know, we were talking before about, tropes and stereotypes, but there are a lot of tropes and stereotypes about the nice girl at work. And one of those is exactly what you said, is that we are people pleasers, we always say yes, and it feels extremely inauthentic and rude to set boundaries. And this book is a lot about how to do that in a way that feels like good and empowering. And again, that comes to like, you kind of sometimes have to like flex that muscle in a couple of different ways before you nail it, but you can nail it. And that book was really helpful to me.
Hey.
So all of you mentioned this a few times, and Amy, you've said it many times about knowing who you are, and moving with that conviction of who you are. How do you guys discover yourself in a way that like is it just an aha moment? Is it just experience? Like how do you get to that stage where you know who you are?
I think it's you're learning while you go. And I think at a certain point there's a maturity that you get to, and kind of there's a comfort zone. I mean, it takes a while. I mean, I've got to say I'm pretty comfortable with who I am now. I still second guess myself, but I think I'm more comfortable now knowing when I'm not comfortable. It might sound so crazy, but I don't need to kind of always own it. It's okay to say, you know what, I'm overwhelmed, I can't, I'm versus before being overwhelmed and kind of taking it out on everybody else maybe, or even on myself, or being, destructive or whatever it may be, nothing horrible, but is just taking a breath. And I think that maybe some meditation has helped.
But I do think that for me, one of the most amazing moments where it just relaxed was, like I said, when I realized in my own office the varied set of skills and personalities that were required to make something happen. And I do think, I know a lot of people love Rick Rubin's book. I love Rick Rubin's book. What's the name of? The Creative, yeah. What is it? The Creative Path? No.
For a second, I thought you guys
Path.
said the creative pragmatist, and I was like, what? I was like, that's where she got it.
But what he says so much is, it goes back to that first question about the things that it's like if you were to submit yourself to a copywriting, to the government to copyright yourself, what are the things that you own full stock? And none of them individually look like you could get a trademark on it, but it's really the aggregate of those things. And so it really is appreciating every single thing that is happening when I embrace the fact of where I'm from and that my parents trust me, at the time I did not like driving in a shitty station wagon to Chicago with 2 dogs, hamsters, and everything in the car for vacation because we didn't have money. But now, that's part of my story. It's made me who I am, and it helped me at American Express when they needed to, talk to the people at Shoney's, and I was the one who could speak the language. And so it's when you can really start to really think about patenting yourself and what would that look like. And why I referenced the Rick Rubin book is he is just so clear that no one patent has the full monopoly on the business. And so if you don't understand what your patent looks like, there's no way for you to really come to terms with what you have to offer. And so I really suggest, when we had people talk about what makes their patent proprietary, kind of listing that out, as obscure as it might be, weird things about your mom,
But I also think it's okay to want help from other people in figuring this out, because I think for me, in articulating those things for myself, this has been a process, but a big part of that process has been, and Amy, I really credit you with this, because you do this very organically. And look, your passion is helping people figure out how they want to show up in the world, which is part of why I remember when you said, when we first had a conversation, you said, look, there's 3 ways that you show up. It's your words, your actions, and your visuals. And my passion is helping people find their visuals. I think this other passion that you have, which is kind of part of what probably gave you this idea of bringing people together, is you're a convener of people. And in the conversations I've had with you and the conversations I've had with Wendy and with Amy Gravitt and with Linda, we are, because we're so different from each other, when we go for walks or have a meal together, there are things we see in each other that are there are things I could tell Amy about herself that are so obvious to me that might be harder for Amy to list for herself. So that gift that I'm deeply grateful for, that you've having
But don't
your
you think
friendship.
that's a gift? Don't you think that quality that you have to see in other people that way? Don't you think that's a gift that has made you successful?
Well, I think that Amy is
No, it's not. I'm
better
just
at
saying
it
for
than
you.
me
Well,
in
no, but
terms
I'm
of
just
bringing
saying
people
you
together.
have been able to sit there and see the positive. And,
Yeah, but
and
I
the
think
insightful.
you've done it for me. Amy's done it for me. So I think the point I'm making for you is, in addition to reflecting and listing the things, finding those people and having those conversations with them can be really powerful too.
Which, by the way, I mean, I really do suggest, don't get creeped out about getting someone else's number here. This is where I've had so many people make great friends. Linda, I know you're here somewhere, but I met this woman in San Francisco who's I had lunch with Linda, and you guys are besties now, and I'm jealous because she's our bestie and everything. But don't be afraid to switch numbers. I think LinkedIn would kill for this algorithm, because it really does bring together very interesting people. Again, it's the shared mindset rather than the shared resume. Are there any other questions? Yeah, hi. So Samara, I got a DM saying, I think I saw you walk by me.
Fashion emergency.
Yeah.
I DM'd you with a fashion emergency because I was asked to do a whole bunch of media, and we brought in a company to teach me how to do media.
Good story.
And
Best
they
story.
gave me a PowerPoint, and they said, here are your outfits. And I was like, oh my God. And I was like, Amy,
Had you worn
what
Tibby
do I do?
beforehand?
I had worn Tibby.
It was
I
11
followed
o'clock at
Amy,
night,
right?
and I'm laying on the couch. I'm on one couch.
So I'm DMing.
Frank's
saying,
on
Amy,
another couch.
This was
2 years ago?
No, it was longer. It was after the pandemic, but it
Oh,
was
yeah,
still
definitely after-
pandemic-y, right? So
But we're
probably
not-
3 or 4 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So I DM her, and I was like, Amy, you don't know me, but this is an emergency, and I've been told I need to wear more jewel tones.
To
And I was
brighten
like,
up my face.
I don't own any jewel tones, and I just thought I was
What
kind
are
of
jewel tones,
throwing
really?
this out into the universe, and I never thought she was going to respond, and literally 30 seconds later, I get this DM that said, "What the fuck? Do you think anybody ever told your CEO to wear more jewel tones to brighten up his face?" And I was like, "Oh my God, you're right." And it was the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
And they didn't know that they lived, and you
And we
didn't
didn't know that we
Well,
lived
then I
yeah.
reached out and I interviewed her on a podcast that
Yeah.
I was doing, and then we had lunch and realized that
But
we,
you lived
But-
very close to each other.
and we
Just
started walking every
coincidence, but
weekend.
Yeah, I was like, Stephen A. Cohen would never be asked to wear
Yeah.
red to lift his cheeks.
Yeah.
And so that is, yeah.
Not my CEO or
And then-
my husband,
and-
but another
but
very
I will say at the
famous
time,
financier.
I had no idea who you
Yeah,
were. And then
yeah.
I remember I was laying on the couch with Frank and we were watching Seinfeld or something. And then you sent me a picture and you were wearing the black and white Tibby
Oh
something.
yeah, I went full Tibby for.
And I was like, shit, it's the BlackRock annual report. I'm like, wow, this is, but that's the thing. I answer my DMs, answer your mail, answer your phone, answer your DMs, unless it's spam. And then Wendy we met because I was in our studio at 56 Crosby Street, and she came barging in, and she's like, my name's Wendy Finerman. I'm making The Devil Wears Prada, and we'd love to use your space. We're filming next door. I'll pay you $10,000. I said I'd like $60,000. You said, how about $30,000? And we'll mention Tibby 3 times in
No,
the
we
film.
used Tibby.
And and I mean, it was, I'm so much happier
But
for the
Frank-
30 and the
but
visuals
Frank-
of the logo.
But Frank and Amy were very close friends with my brother, which I didn't know.
We didn't know.
And it was a very, and when we shot there, and Amy thought it was not very nice, I've never done this before, but the day we were shooting at her place, we had to shoot the opening. We do these things called, when you're trying to save money, you have like splinter crews. So you like kind of take half the crew, which you're not supposed to, and you shoot another scene really close away, but not there. And I had to direct for my first time ever. I'll never do it again. And it was the most frightening, horrible thing, and I was in a really bad mood, and you thought I was horrible. But then, 3 or 4 years later, I won't go into it long, since she's so close with my brother and my sister-in-law, they're like, you will only come for Thanksgiving if Amy and Frank come and the boys. And then
You were wearing Drees.
we were there during the pandemic together, just us. We were there, so it was fortuitous.
Yeah.
And you know, I like to think of myself as a fashion person, and Amy's like finally said to me after we were friends about 2 or 3 years, the opposite of you, she said, well, why don't you wear any of my clothes? And I was like, I don't know how to wear your clothes. And she took me down to Worcester and she showed me how to wear clothes. I was very much, I stayed within the lines, if that makes sense. Then she messed me up.
But I think
she
Then
screwed
she
me
broke
up.
you.
Right, she broke me. Like with
but I
things
do
that are
think to the-
so big, but that's the way they should be.
I do think, though, to the Friends thing, and when Amy Gravitt and I were doing that thing at SCAD, she kept pointing out that, like, you build your peer set around you. Don't go looking over your peer set's heads. When you're at a party and someone's like, and they're always looking around. I hate those people. Build your peer set, and it comes. We have never, you talk about the sycophants and the ones who are like, really, they're not saying what they mean. And it just feels, I think when you talk about when do you know yourself, it's when you can feel like so authentic that everyone around you is there because there's a story there. There's a storyline rather than, hey, I would like to get to know someone better that you have worked in this job and could you introduce me type thing. Thank you, guys. Thank you for coming. Thanks. Thank you, guys.
She's more creative than I am. Right? She's more creative than I am.
And you're better at
Wendy
math
just
than
said
me.
she's more creative than I am. Like, it's funny that.
I couldn't write I literally.